In this presentation, we will learn about the perspective from below and other perspectives in sociology. Firstly, it is necessary to indicate that the perspective from below is not. The view from below should not be confused for the study of other cultures, the conventional avocation of anthropologists. Anthropological method. The specificity of anthropological method is the distinction between the ethic and emic approaches, both of which entailed the technique of participant observation, which is often mystified. By demystification of participant observation, which was bound to happen when anthropologists started investigating their own societies. The point of interest for the present is that in hierarchical societies, anthropologists draw from the upper castes, invariably reluctant to participate at the bottom rung of society given the norms and values associated with the practice of untouchability. Should an effort to participate in the life world of the untouchables be made by a Savarna anthropologist, it will be disapproved not only by his own Jati peers but also by the untouchables themselves, given the grip of the doctrine of karma and reincarnation on them. Even the distinction between the ethic and emic approaches remain problematic. The ethic approach identified and studied social reality independently of the natives' cultural judgments. The emic view, in contrast, is an insider's view. Subalternist perspective. The perspective from below should not be confused for the much heralded subalternist perspective. Subalternists focus their attention on the circles of elite politics and have emphasized the insurrectionary activities and potential of the subaltern classes, which are made up of artisans, poor peasants, and landless laborers. According to them, these were the ones who possessed self-conscious and coherent conceptions of resistance that were directed against rich peasants, urban traders or merchants, or the colonial revenue administrators. Subalternists claim to have unfolded the incapacity of nationalist historiography to incorporate the voices of the weak into the project of history writing. Proletarian, feminist, or generational perspective. The view from below is different from the proletarian, feminist, or generational perspective. Class, in the sense of social gradations, exists in all societies, and there are no immutable boundaries between classes. Both embourgeoisment and proletarianization were perennial possibilities. Indeed, declassing has been advocated and successfully attempted by many investigators. There was a time, say in the 1960s, when the widespread belief prevailed that the youth alone had the capacity to cognize truth. Those above 30 were adjudged to be incapable of perceiving truth. The extremists among feminists seem to take the view that only women can understand and analyze issues concerning women. The corollary of this is that only men can understand their problems. Economic and political perspective. In plural societies, the segments, even when they are equals, remain cultural strangers. That is, even as they interact in the economic and political contexts which result in interdependence, culturally they are insulated. Following Simmel's notion, one can even accept the advantages of doing research among strangers. The point is that the perspective from below is the specific need of hierarchical societies such as India, wherein the society is tightly compartmentalized that one segment cannot penetrate into the other. Having said the above, we need to add a caveat here. If one were to take a position that there is a possibility of an outsider ever investigating a segment of society to which he does not belong, then each segment will have to produce its own set of researchers. This will leave some segments uninvestigated forever. For example, who will study children, individuals, imbeciles, or insane people? At any rate, there is an advantage for those segments which can be studied by its own representatives and by outsiders also. The need for a perspective from below. The need for a perspective from below is intricately interlinked with the hierarchical nature of societies such as those of India. All the available evidence suggests that Indian sociologists and social anthropologists predominantly drawn from the twice-born caste Hindus, at least until recently, have largely neglected the social realities of the lowly placed and oppressed OBCs and SCs. The All India Sociological Conference held in 1955, D.P. Mukherjee insisted that it was not enough that an Indian sociologist be a sociologist, but that he be an Indian first. And how do sociologists acquire Indianness? By situating himself in Indian lore, both high and low. But unless sociological training in India is grounded in Sanskrit or any such language in which the traditions have been embodied as symbols, social research in India will be a pale imitation of what others are doing. Although Mukherjee wanted sociologists to be familiar with Indian lore, both high and low, he thought that our traditions were embodied in Sanskrit. Problems with this advocacy. First, only the twice-born caste, Hindus, were allowed any access to Sanskrit in which the traditional texts of knowledge were written. By insisting that Sanskrit be the route through Indian sociologists to cultivate originality, Mukherjee was narrowing the recruitment base of Indian sociologists. Second, by the time education became a constitutional possibility, Sanskrit ceased to be an alive language. Third, the reference to such other languages may be an allusion to Pali and Tamil, but does it include Persian too? If indeed all the four languages, Sanskrit, Pali, Tamil, and Persian, are under reference, one cannot talk of tradition in the singular, for indeed there is a multiplicity of traditions in India. Fourth, even if one takes such an accommodative view, still all the traditions under reference are great traditions. And the traditions of the vast majority of the people of India are little traditions confined to folk regions. No sociologist can afford to neglect this rich variety of traditions if he wishes to be called authentic. Fifth, it is difficult to comprehend why training in sociology grounded in Sanskrit and or other such languages can inform sociology of originality. According to Mukherjee's prescription, an overwhelming majority of Indian sociologists are pale imitators. On the other hand, those handful of Sanskrit knowing sociologists hardly demonstrated any originality. They invariably indulged in exegetical genesis. In turn, this blurs the distinction between Indology and sociology. Mukherjee, in Indian Sociology and Tradition, said, all our Shastras are sociological. There is an interesting link between the need to anchor a sociologist's training in knowledge of Sanskrit and the observation that the Shastras are sociological because the latter are in Sanskrit. But a few uncomfortable facts may be noted here. First, the observation stands for Hindus, but Indian sociology cannot be equated with Hindu sociology for the simple reason that 1 out of every 8 Indians is a non-Hindu. Second, Hindu sociology necessarily implies Muslim sociology, Buddhist sociology, and the like, the very antithesis of sociology as a humanistic and encapsulating enterprise. Third, ours does not stand even for all Hindus. The majority of the Hindu population, the OBCs and SCs, have no role in the making of these Shastras and they are treated as congenital interiors by twice born Hindus. In fact, the Panchamas, those of the fifth order, the untouchables, are not even accounted for in the Chaturvarna theory, which deals with Hindu doctrine of creation. Not only that, the Shastras also assign a marginal position to the women of even the twice born Varnas. To put it pithily, the Shastras privilege upper caste males and treat the vast majority of Hindus as inferiors. Can they be sociological? Sociology cannot ignore the experiences of any segment in society, much less treat them as inferior. The mission of sociology is all embracing and ought to be humanistic. While the Shastras are theological, they cannot be sociological. To anchor Indian sociology to the Hindu Shastras is to undermine sociology's secular and humane foundations. Finally, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, in his debates with M.K. Gandhi in the 1930s, insisted that only if the Puranas and Shastras and all scriptures that supported caste, that is, inequality and injustice, were disowned, could he call himself a Hindu. As is well known, the challenge was not admissible to caste Hindus, and Ambedkar embraced Buddhism in 1956. Finally, it is necessary to recognize that knowledge has two uses: oppression and perpetuation of hegemony, and institutionalization of equality and justice. The view from above sometimes directly and almost always indirectly aids and abets oppression and hegemonization. The view from below can and should provide the much needed antidote to this, facilitating the institutionalization of equality and social justice. This is the rationale and justification for the perspective from below, which can contribute to the nurturing of a robust civil society. Thank you for watching the presentation. Do like, subscribe, share, and leave your comments about this presentation or any other topics you would like to learn more about.